Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to be taking a look at Novell Netware, both on the software side as well as on the hardware side with this NE2000 networking card from Novell. Now what we'll also see in this video is 3 286 machines that I'll be using as a client on the network. I was actually in the process of selling one of those 286 machines, and as I had them laid out on the bench, I thought it would be interesting to see if I could hook them up through a network. And then I was thinking about what type of network, and then I thought Novell Netware might be an interesting choice, as I do have a boxed networking card, so I thought that was to make a fun video. And here we are with the 3 286 machines and the Novell Netware hardware in place. So the goal of this video is to see how we can get these 3 286 machines to talk to one another via the network. We're going to get the hardware and the software in place. We're going to see if we can share applications and games via the network, and then find some multiplayer games that will run on this Novell network. But let's start by looking at this Novell Netware box that I have here, network computing products from Eagle Technology. And inside here we have both a networking card, the original Novell NE2000 networking card. We also have a manual, so we'll take a look at that. And we also have the Novell Netware driver disk for this card. So let's start by taking a look at the actual networking card. So this is a 16-bit ISA networking card from Novell, released in 1990. So this is the NE2000 card, as many NE2000 compatible cards came after this one. We also have the Netware driver disk for the NE2000, and we have this lovely red Novell Ethernet supplement for Netware documentation that we'll take a look at. So yeah, this is quite the iconic networking card from Novell, 1990, 16-bit ISA. So everything is configured using these two jumper sets here, so you can configure both the I/O address and the IRQ using these jumpers. Everything is pretty well documented in this manual here, so all the various jumper configurations can be found here for the various I/O address and IRQ combos. Now, of course, this NE2000 card has the coaxial connector, which kind of makes it difficult to set up a network. So instead, I opted for another networking card from Novell. 1 year later, 1991, same jumper configuration, same networking card, only this one has a standard RJ45 UTP Ethernet connector as opposed to the coaxial connector that you see on the other card. That kind of makes my life a little bit easier. Now, if you are interested in setting up a network using these coaxial cables and BNC connectors and T connectors, I do have a video on that. I will probably redo this video with proper old school networking cards, but for now I'm just going to go for this card here and make my life a little bit easier and just go for the standard Ethernet RJ45 cables. Let's take a quick look at the manual. I love browsing through these things because, you know, they kind of lay out some theory on how to set up a network, how the cabling works, how to set up these BNC connectors, how you should ground the wire, how you should terminate the wire. So yeah, it's really nice to see, to browse through this documentation also regarding the networking card, obviously how to set it up, how to install it on your computer, how to configure the jumpers. So yeah, really nice to have this original documentation here. But now, before we take a look at the 3 286 clients that will be put on the Novell network, we're going to first start with the server, and we're going to set up a Novell Netware 4.2 based server. And for that, I'm going to be using this Intel Pentium 3 machine that I have lying around. But before I do the installation on the actual hardware, I just want to show you guys how you can do an installation yourself using VMware. So you can definitely install Novell Netware on a virtualized environment like VMware. So I have a virtual machine here. Now, I did try installing version 4.2 on VirtualBox, but that for one reason or another doesn't work. It just hangs during the setup. So you need to have something like VMware in order to use version 4.2. And what I have here is a virtual machine with two hard drives. I have a 260 megabyte hard drive and a 520 megabyte hard drive. Now the 260 megabyte hard drive will be used to install MS-DOS. So I'm just going to be using my MS-DOS 6.22 setup disks and install MS-DOS because Novell Netware, the networking server side of the software, basically runs on top of MS-DOS or needs MS-DOS to kind of bootstrap the server. So having a version of MS-DOS installed is kind of a prerequisite. So here we have MS-DOS 6.22 installed. Both of the hard drives are formatted by the MS-DOS setup program, and now we're going to go ahead and install our CD-ROM driver because the Novell Netware 4.2 installation is done off of a CD-ROM. So for that we obviously need to have a CD-ROM drive. So I have installed that one, and we should have a drive letter E right now. And with the Novell Netware CD-ROM inserted, we can launch the install program off of the CD-ROM drive, accept the software license, and we should be ready to install Novell Netware. So installation is very straightforward. You can opt to install Netware 4.2 using either a simple installation or a custom. I'm going to go with the simple installation because that is basically something that will work out of the box. We get a little warning that we don't have enough cylinders, but we'll ignore that. We need to give our server a name. I'm going to be using it my server. It will copy some files to the MS-DOS partition. This is just to kind of bootstrap the Novell Netware server, and then we get into the actual installation program. Now, Novell Netware has a lot of networking driver support, and it does have support for the AMD Ethernet PC net card, which is found in VMware. So it's just a matter of selecting the AMD Ethernet PC net card. It will load up the drivers, and we should be good to go. So at this point, the installer has detected our hard drives, our CD-ROM drive. It has loaded up a networking driver for the AMD PC net. Next up, we get this warning that we might be using a network driver that conflicts with the DOS CD-ROM driver, but I guess it always says that, but we shouldn't worry about it, so we can just continue. Then we get this error report, which kind of threw me off because at this point I thought that the installation would be over and done with and I wouldn't be able to proceed, but apparently this can just be ignored. Another error or warning that pops up is that no accessible drives have netware partitions. I guess this is normal because this is the first time we're installing Novell Netware on this virtual machine. I did have two hard drives, but they were both formatted using the MS-DOS file system, so I guess that's the reason why we're getting this message. But we can just continue with the installation. And then we're greeted with another message here. I don't know what these pink messages mean, if these are warnings or just informative, but basically it says here that we already have some disk partitions on the hard drive. So this is part of the MS-DOS installation. So this is just to, inform us that these will be scratched by the Netware installation. Next up, it's going to be mounting the volume. It's going to be examining the network, installing the protocols, and check for conflicts. We get another warning here that we cannot mount the CD-ROM volume as a Netware volume. I guess this is normal because we can just hit enter to continue. Now, I did find these messages to be somewhat confusing because here, you kind of think that you're totally screwed because you cannot continue with the installation, but then you just hit enter and the thing continues. And then it will go ahead and copy some files to the Netware partition. So this is the 525 megabyte partition which was on this virtual machine. We need to confirm that this is our first Netware server, set the time zone. Because this is Netware 4.2, we need to provide an organization name. We give it an administrator password. It will then install the directory services, which is a new feature part of Novell Netware version 4. And then we should basically be good to go, I think. The only thing that we still need to do is install a license. So as I already said, that in order to use Novell Netware with more than one client, you need to have a valid license. Now on archive.org, I did find a CNE course that contained the utility to create a 5 client license disk for NetWare 4.2. So I just used that one, and then after that it just starts copying files again onto the NetWare system volume, and then hopefully after that we should be good to go. So the server installation is complete. It is recommended that you reboot the server after exiting the installation, because when you exit the installation, you're dropped into the server environment. Then we just reboot into MS-DOS, and then we can start our server. Now it doesn't automatically start, so we need to navigate into the NW server folder on our C drive, and then enter the server command to start the Novell Netware server. So you can see here that we have a 5 client license, so we can hook up to 5 computers onto our little Novell network. So yeah, for those that want to experiment a little bit with Novell Netware 4.2, VMware is definitely an option if you don't have any dedicated hardware and just want to use some virtual machines to try stuff out. I really recommend it. As far as the real hardware is concerned, installing it on the Pentium 3 machine was a breeze. It was exactly the same as in this virtual machine. The only difference obviously was the networking part, because the Pentium 3 was using a Realtek PCI Ethernet card, and to my astonishment, it was automatically detected by the Netware 4.2 installation program, so I didn't need to install any third-party drivers. It was supported out of the box, and that all went really well. It did took a little bit longer than on the virtual machine, which is to be expected obviously, because everything needs to be copied from the CD-ROM drive. The Pentium 3 will obviously be a lot slower than my VMware, but in the end the installation went without any hiccups, and we were dropped into the server environment without any issues. But now onto the clients that we'll set up on this little network, and we'll start with this Hyundai Super 286E computer that has been featured on the channel before. It's a very low spec machine, so yeah, no expansion cards. We just have an MDA connector here for a video output. I believe this machine has 1 megabytes of RAM. There's only one card here, which is the display adapter, and that's it. So we're going to be adding our NE2000 card here onto this computer. So we have sufficient 16-bit ISA slots here. So it's just a matter of freeing up one and then installing the Novell NE2000 card in this computer. I am going to be using the default jumper settings, so that should set the card to IO address 300 and IRQ3. I believe these are free on this machine, and I will show you how to configure the card in software just to verify that everything is working. So for now, let's just put the card into the 16-bit ISA slot, screw it back in, and then put everything back together so that we can boot the computer. Next up, we have the Acer 915P, which is also a 286 computer. This also has been featured on the channel. This one is a little bit more beefy in the sense that it has 5 megabytes of RAM. It has a sound card. So we'll just open her up and install the Novell networking card here. There should be a free ISA slot here on the side, so we're going to be using that. And again, we're going to be using the default jumper settings of the NE2000 card, IO 300 and IRQ10, and we'll see if we'll be able to configure and use this card. Next up, we have the AT286 computer, and I really love this machine. This is a pure clone machine, so it's not of any particular brand. But yeah, it does have the nice 5.25-inch disk drive and the 3.5-inch disk drive on the back. We already have a networking card in place because I did use this computer for my Windows 3.11 and MS-DOS networking video, but we're going to be replacing the existing networking card, which only had the coaxial connector, and we're going to be installing this Novell NE2000 card in there. So let's open up the cover here. As you can see, things are pretty crowded in there. You can also see the old MFM hard drive here, which is still working on this computer. We're just going to go ahead and remove the existing networking card from this computer. So yeah, as I said before, I know when I find my coaxial cables again, I will probably set up an old school coaxial networking using these computers. But for now, it's just going to be RJ45. So yeah, obviously this NE2000 card is a bit larger than the original networking card that was inside, so I'll need to find a different slot because the hard drive is a little bit in the way, so I'm just going to be slotting it in between this video card and controller card here. So with everything installed, let's boot up our 3 clients here by pressing the power button. Making sure all of the Ethernet cables are properly attached to the computers and verifying that they come onto the network via this little router here. My apologies for those who expected a coaxial network, but I'll promise to do that in a other video. But for now, it's just a matter of getting these online and seeing if they can talk to each other. But before we can do that, we need to install some software. Okay, so now that we have the machines up and running, networking card installed, let's see what kind of client software we need to install on these machines in order to get them to talk to one another. Now, because these are 286 based machines with very limited memory, I opted for the Netware 3.12 client, which runs perfectly fine on a 286, even with 1 megabyte of RAM. And I'm going to be using that as a client. So let's just start this computer right here. And actually the first thing that I'm going to do is to just check the basic network connectivity, because this machine here has a Sound Blaster card which takes up IOs and IRQs. It has a serial port. And one of the things that you need to be absolutely sure of is that your networking card is functioning properly. So what we're going to be doing here is I'm going to be using the Novell driver disk, go into the DOS ODI folder, execute the LSL command, which is the network link support layer, and then followed by the NE2000 command, which should automatically detect our networking card on IRQ3, IO port 300, and it has found our networking card. So that's already good. So next up is the client software, which is also very straightforward. So this is basically a 2-disk installation. The first disk contains the install program, very straightforward, drops you into this little installer. We're going to be using the default folder name, allow for the config.sys and autoexec.bat to change, and then we will insert the driver disk, which is part 2 of the 2-disk client installation. And on that second disk you have networking drivers for all kinds of networking cards, including also our Novell NE2000 Eagle card. So we're going to go ahead and select that one. All we need to do is confirm the IO port, which is 300, and the hardware interrupt or IRQ, which is 3. All of the rest is pretty standard. We can hit enter to install, and the client software will install our networking driver, install the client software, and we should be good to go. All we need to do now is reboot the machine, where you will see that the Novell Netware client has inserted a couple of lines in your autoexec.bat, which will load up the networking driver for the networking card, as well as loading up the client software, which will connect to our server called My Server. Now, in order to log on to the network, we can go to the F drive, which is created for us, hit the login command, and then use our credentials to log into the Novell Netware network. And here you can see we are attached to the server and we get a couple of drives here. So yeah, basic network connectivity has been set up. And of course we'll do the same thing on the other machines. So even on this little Hyundai 286 here with 1 megabytes of RAM, I was able to install the client software without any issues. I could log on to the network, I could get access to the public folder and access all of the files there. So this is pretty great. And to me personally, it's just a much more nice experience to do this on actual hardware instead of just using a virtual machine. The fact that you can, have the clicky keyboard and have the computer sounds and have the physical computers in one space makes it really, really nice to work with these kinds of networking software stacks. For example, if I want to send a message from the Hyundai machine to the Acer machine, I can use the send command and send a hi message to the Acer machine, and the Acer machine will automatically see it. So there will be this little pop-up on top of the screen with the message coming from the Hyundai. But obviously we also want to have some rest and relaxation, so time for a little LAN party here. And the game of choice is NetWars, provided by Novell. This is kind of a game that was developed by Novell just to kind of showcase the possibilities of such a network. So you can start the game either in single player mode or multiplayer mode. When you select multiplayer mode, you get 4 slots for players that can participate in the multiplayer game. So we're going to hook up this first PC here, which is a 386 that I've also added as a client. Now, because things are a bit lonely as you are the only player in a multiplayer game, let's add some other players here. For example, this Acer. So all we need to do is load up NetWars on all of the different PCs, select multiplayer mode, select a free slot. As you can see here, player 1 is already defined as being the 386, so we're going to be adding our Acer computer here, and now we have a LAN party of 2. Now, a lot of these early 90s games either used a null modem cable to allow for 2 players to play together, and even a lot of the games that supported networking were also limited to 2 players. So there aren't that many games out there that support more than 2 players on a network. But this is a fine example of such a game. So it's really nice to just blow your opponent out of space here using NetWars. You can see that the 386 has been killed, and if we look at the screen on the 386, it is in fact confirmed that it was killed by the Acer machine. But of course, because we have 4 computers here, we can actually play a LAN party game with 4 computers using NetWars, which makes it extra fun. So it's just really cool to see one computer blasting the other computer out of the sky. And the fact that you can have up to 4 players on this game is also pretty neat, especially if you have these 4 computers set up here. It's really fun to just, on one computer attack somebody and then just hear it on the back that the other ones are getting attacked. So yeah, really, really cool. Now, I also wanted to give a shout out to a couple of other YouTubers that have done a couple of Novell Netware videos, starting with N Commander here, who I think he has a live stream of like 6 hours where he goes into a lot of old versions of Novell. So yeah, definitely I recommend looking at his channel. He has lots of great retro stuff, not only Novell, but also lots of other cool stuff. So definitely check that out. Another channel that I would like to recommend here is Retro Tech Chris, who also has a nice video on installing Novell Netware 3.12. He also has a GitHub repository explaining in detail what the various steps and patches are in order to get an old version of NetWare installed. But he has also lots of other great retro tech videos. And last but not least, we also have Retro Bytes, who made a really nice video on Novell for December in 2020. More of a documentation style video, but very enjoyable to watch. He also has lots of other content on his retro channels, so definitely check out him. I will put the links to all of these channels into the description of the video, so yeah, please check them out. And with that said, this pretty much concludes this part of my Novell Netware experiment here on my little networking lab. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up, consider commenting on the video, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so. I'll probably do a follow-up because I've rather enjoyed the experience of working with NetWare, especially on actual hardware, on an actual networked setup here. So the coaxial thing is something that I would like to cover, also dive a little bit more into the actual demonstration of NetWare, and also perhaps check out some older versions. So yeah, I hope to see you guys in the next one. For now, I'm just going to play some games here, enjoy the little setup that I have here, and I hope to see you guys very soon in the future. Bye bye.